I was talking to our state league president in Nevada the other day because they have a wonderful little election coming up in 2010. Many of you probably are aware that on their ballot is a change in the Constitution to adopt merit selection in the state of Nevada. Apparently, the Speaker of the House over there worked for 12 or 14 years before he was able to finally achieve getting that put on the ballot. It has a very interesting piece to it, and it incorporates right away in the Constitution the judicial performance evaluation part of it that most of the merit selection states adopted as an afterthought or as an afterpiece, if you will. So that's going to be quite an interesting November 2010 election on merit selection, coupled with that piece of judicial performance evaluation, and also coupled with the requirement to get 55% of the vote in a retention election. That's right in the amendment. But anyway, back to my story about the Nevada State League president. Of course, their league has studied this issue, and they are in favor of merit selection, and they are going to go about educating the voters on this particular issue. They're extremely worried that people will not pay any attention whatsoever to this issue. They know nothing, of course, about the court systems to begin with, and they will not pay any attention to this because they have a few big races next year for their governor and also Harry Reid's Senate seat. And so the league is starting now to put together an education process on the constitutional amendment. So the Nevada president was, she was excited and telling me all about the process that they're going to be educating voters. And she said to me, of course, the other day, one of our longtime league members came up to me and chastised me because how could the league possibly be supporting merit selection? Because it was undemocratic. Well, so you see, the jury's still out. We're still back to the Jacksonian democracy era of some people believing that a democratic system such as we have in the United States should elect our judges. Well, there are too many horror stories on the other side of the coin for most of us to buy into that undemocratic concept. Because you know what it takes to get elected as a judge in a partisan or even a nonpartisan election. And that's money and political clout in most instances. Probably, I could say, in all instances. So that's some of the work that the League of Women Voters all across the country is doing. A large part of our work really is educating the public. And I was so very enthusiastic to hear what the Colorado Judicial Institute is doing to educate the public on the judiciary, because unfortunately it is viewed as the most unknown branch, the most mysterious branch to most of our citizenry. And so everything that we can possibly do to inform people will help in that process. Let me tell you a little bit about the work of the League. We have held educational forums in states across the country, in Minnesota, in Mississippi, where they elect judges in nonpartisan elections, in Ohio, where it is partisan election, and of course here in Colorado, we've held educational forums where you have merit selection. And what do we find? And what is it that makes me believe from the information that I hear from these forums about why the jury's still out on merit selection? A lot of misinformation. A lot of concern about the process that indeed the money, the big money in races involving judges is doing terrible damage to the public's perception of the fairness in the courts. But they don't always tie the concept of how do we take that bias or perception of bias out of the system. We in the League of Women Voters actively support public financing of campaigns, not only judiciary campaigns, but also all races. We realize, though, that you have to start somewhere. And so our leagues have worked in a number of states, including my own state of New Mexico, to achieve that concept of public financing for judges. It's a place to start in getting public financing across the board. Also, our state leagues, we've fought for years to take the money out of all kinds of campaigns. And I have to tell you that in a number of states in recent years, and you all know the horror stories in Michigan and Ohio, where huge sums of money have been involved in the races for the highest courts in those states. It's almost embarrassing to tell about some of those. And the Ohio League did a survey a few years ago, and they essentially found that 82% of the voters in Ohio believed that campaign contributions, either to a great or some extent, influenced judges and judicial candidates. And that's a pitiful indictment of the way in which the public feels about our judiciary. In California, I'm very pleased to say that the League of Women Voters there is working proactively with the Supreme Court to try to get out ahead of the concept of this bad public perception. And the State League president there sits on a panel that was established by the Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court to look at ways of improving the public perception of judges in the state. One of my national board members, sits on judicial selection panels at the lower courts in the state of Kansas. Our members, who are volunteer members across the country, in all of our locations, do everything that they possibly can to get the word out to the public. Now, I want to turn my attention to a couple of things that have happened very recently that certainly many of you are familiar with. The U.S. Supreme Court case that was decided earlier this year, Caperton versus Massey. Talk about big money in politics. The League did join on that same amicus brief with the Colorado Judicial Institute in urging the court, the U.S. Supreme Court, to extend the reaches of due process so that in that particular case there would be some more attention to campaign funds being present in judicial races. And for those of you who don't know the facts in that case, it came out of West Virginia. Supreme Court justice received indirectly or directly, mostly indirectly, about $3 million in campaign contributions from a particular corporation that was involved in litigation. Two coal companies were suing each other. One coal company thought that he'd been run out of business by the big coal company. Well, you can imagine it was the big coal company that actually contributed the $3 million to the sitting justice. And he did not recuse himself when that case came before the court. So that's how it got to the Supreme Court. And we were all very, very encouraged, as I'm sure you were here at the CJI, that on a 5-4 opinion, the U.S. Supreme Court did indeed extend the due process clause to encourage recusal where big money is involved.